Hey yo, happy Monday. It's your girl Duchess Charm. You already know what time it is. I hope everybody that's watching this had a wonderful weekend. But yeah, it's another episode of Crime and Conviction. So just sit back, relax, and it's time to talk about murder. This case is a bit of a tragic one and it is gruesome as well. It is not a Jamaican case, but to be honest, I think at this point in time you guys don't even care. So we're going to be talking about the murder of Nikki Whitehead. Nikki Whitehead didn't have the easiest life. When she was born, she was actually born in prison because her mother was serving time for drug possession. Nikki's grandmother was the one that stepped up to the plate and she was the one that raised her, but she really didn't have a tight grip on Nikki. Nikki could do whatever she wanted. She could go out whenever she wanted, come in whenever she wanted, go to parties and all of these things. So because of this lifestyle, when Nikki was 17, she got pregnant and gave birth to two twin girls, and she named them Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead. Jazz and Taz for short. Now, for the first 12 years of these girls' lives, they lived with their great-grandmother and their mother, which would be Nikki and Nikki's grandmother. And they had a wonderful life and everything, but of course Nikki wanted more for herself and her daughters. So when she had the opportunity to, she moved out into a gated community. Nikki wanted her daughters to have opportunities that she really didn't get, so she would send them to do singing classes and dance classes and all of these wonderful little things. They were straight A students and they were growing into themselves and they were a bit rebellious, but we'll get into that later. On January 13th, 2010, while a police officer was out doing his patrols, he saw two young girls frantically trying to flag him down. So obviously, being the police officer, he stopped trying to find out what was wrong, and these girls dropped a bombshell on him. They told him that they just came home from school and found their mother dead. So the police officer asked him to just sit in the back seat, and he drove to where the girls lived, and while he was driving there, he called for backup. When the police officers got there and went inside the apartment, it was a blood bath. There was blood all over the place, splatter marks, drag marks, and you could see that whatever happened here, it was crazy. So when they followed these drag marks, they found Nikki deceased in the bathtub, and Nikki had over 50 stab wounds to her body. The police, they're making their checks and everything, and they realize that all the windows in the apartment are closed. There's no sign of forced entry, so the robbery theory isn't looking so, plausible at this point in time. Because stabbing cases are usually so personal, the first person that police wanted to speak with was Nikki's fiance. However, he was a truck driver and he was nowhere to be found. He left out for work. They were making calls to his phone and they were not getting him, so obviously this is suspicious as hell. The fiance lived with Nikki and her two girls, and he actually helped to raise these girls, and he was described as a really nice guy. So they're looking around the scene and they're wondering, what happened? Was it this guy? But anyways, because they weren't getting through to him, obviously the investigation had to move on. So they're making checks in the neighborhood, and when they went over to the neighbor's house, they saw that there was a splotch of blood on his doorstep. They questioned the neighbor, and he said that in the morning when he was sleeping, he heard a knock on his door, but he ignored it. He was enjoying his sleep. So that was it. He had no idea how the blood got there or whatever. The authorities then noticed that there was a camera on his property, and they asked him for the footage. He was very cooperative. He gave them the footage. When they checked it, though, unfortunately the camera was facing the other way, so you couldn't see his doorstep or anything. Anyways, they questioned this neighbor just to ensure that he wasn't involved in this gruesome murder, and it seemed as if he wasn't. They also took the twin girls down to the station so they can give their statements and everything. But while the twins were in the back of the police vehicle, one of the girls started to bite herself. So the police officer asked about this, and she said that this was just like a nervous reaction, so they didn't really look into it any further. Down by the police station, when the girls were being questioned, they were asked to recount their day, which they did. They got up in the morning, their mom was alive and everything. They got ready for school, said bye to their mother, went down to the bus stop. However, they did miss their bus, and instead of going home and asking their mom for a ride to school, the girls decided that they were going to walk. They walked to school and they got there on time, and they carried on throughout their day like normal, and they went home. Now when they got home is when they saw the gruesome scene and went outside to flag down the policeman. The police had to check their bodies for marks, which they did, and they documented all of this. The girls had scratches and bruises all over their body, and they also had bite marks. But remember, one of the girls said, you know, she bites herself when she was nervous. But irregardless of that, they documented the bites. Police only had circumstantial evidence, and they really didn't have any evidence to hold the girls or anything. So they let the girls go into the custody of their great-grandmother. And that was it for the girls. During the interview that the girls had with the police, they told the police that their mom was actually cheating on her fiance with this guy called Joe. And the night before she was murdered, they heard her arguing with him on the phone. So they took Joe's information and everything, and then they went out to find Joe. They went to his place of work, which was a barber shop. It was after work hours. They found him and they told him what had happened to Nikki. And he was visibly distraught, like he was really shaken up and everything. So they questioned him, and he said the night before Nikki's murder, they met up. Nikki went over to Joe's house and they spoke for a little bit, where he actually broke things off with her. She was very upset about this, and she stormed out the building, and that was the last time he saw her. The police clearly had to do checks on this. They went to Joe's apartment. There was surveillance footage, and it showed that Joe was actually telling the truth. So on the surveillance, Nikki went into the building at about 10:30, and then at around 11 she left. This proved that Joe was telling the truth, but about the night before the murder. What happened on the day of the murder? Because remember, the girl said that they got up and their mom was alive. So they asked Joe if he would want to take a polygraph test, which he did, and also they examined his body for any marks or whatever. There was no marks on his body, and he also passed the polygraph test. So Joe was in the clear. The other suspect would be Nikki's fiance, which was not answering the phone. No one was getting through to him. After almost 24 hours, they finally got in contact with him, and they told him what had happened to Nikki, and he was distraught as well. He was very shaken up and everything, and they had to ask him the hard questions, you know. The fiance was asked about his whereabouts and what he did that morning, and he said that he just got up and went straight to work. Nikki was still alive. The girls were in their room sleeping, and he just got straight to work. It was a normal day for him, and he was hundreds of miles away. There was GPS on the truck, and this GPS recording verified that the truck was hundreds of miles away. But then again, we don't know if he was the one driving the truck. The GPS showed that at around 8:30, which probably would have been around the time that the crime got committed, he stopped at a gas station. So the authorities, they went to the gas station, they asked for some security footage, and you could clearly see that the person driving the truck was the fiance. So he was no longer on the suspect list. He was crossed off. At this point in time, the police were at a standstill, but they weren't out of suspects. So they checked the vicinity to see if there was any other security cameras close by Nikki's house that could probably pick up somebody suspicious or something. So there was a gas station there, and they asked for the surveillance footage of this gas station. The gas station owners gave it to them, and they checked the night before the murder, didn't see anything. They checked the morning and they didn't see anything. They said, you know, let's just fast forward it a little bit, and at around 10 they saw two little figures kind of walk into the view. These two figures were Jazz and Taz. Now Jazz and Taz walked up to a vehicle. They spoke to the driver a little bit, and then they got into the vehicle, and the vehicle drove off from the gas station. This was suspicious, and this goes against everything that Jazz and Taz said that they did that morning. So they needed to find this vehicle, and they needed to find the driver of the vehicle. So the car was not hard to find because it was a bit of a distinctive vehicle, and they found the driver pretty quick and pretty easy. So the driver was a guy named Leonard, and he came in to speak with the police officers. And obviously the police wanted to know what was his relation to the girls and so on and so forth. And he said he didn't know them. These two girls just walked up to him when he was filling some gas at the gas station. They told him they were late for school and if he could give them a ride, which he did. And 6 minutes later, he dropped them off at school, and that was it. They had to double check Leonard's story. So they went to the school and checked out the school security footage, and that's when they saw that 6 minutes after he picked them up from the gas station, he dropped them off at school. They also searched his car, and they found no evidence at all in there. So clearly this man was not related to the crime, and he was let off the hook as well. The girls were looking a bit suspicious, but the police couldn't barge in and arrest the girls because all they had was circumstantial evidence. But the police hit gold. So remember, there was some bite marks on one of the girls. Well, those bite marks matched up perfectly with Nikki's teeth marks. Nikki had a gap, and the bite marks clearly showed the bites of someone with a gap. Also, when the police went digging for some evidence in the house, they found a journal that the girls used to communicate back and forth. They knew this because there was two different sets of handwritings. They spoke about how much they hated their mother, and one of the entries even said, "We got to get rid of her," and the response for that was, "She got to go ASAP." At this point in time, it had been 4 months since the murder, and the police were surveilling the girls from day one, you know. And the girls, they were living a pretty normal life. They were going to school, they went to prom, they would hook up with their friends and stuff like that. So the last day of school, the police decided to arrest the girls and charge them with murdering their mother. Both of these girls were 16. They were questioning the girls, but the girls remained silent, and they also pled not guilty, and they sat in jail waiting for a trial. 4 years after the girls were arrested, they finally told detectives that they wanted to talk. And when they sat in the interrogation room, the girls told the police everything that happened that morning. Now, before I go into all of the details of what happened that morning, let's talk about the relationship that Nikki had with her daughters. Nikki wanted to have a stricter relationship with her girls because remember, she didn't really have any guidance growing up. So she started to implement curfews and all sorts of rules, and the girls really did not like this. There was even an incident when one of the girls snuck out of the house when she was 13, and Nikki had to call the police. The girls were being rebellious, they were acting out. So there was even a time where Nikki called a police officer to come and talk to the girls. A female police officer showed up. She sat the girls down and she was talking to them, and the girls expressed that they really didn't want to be in this setting. They would prefer if they were with their great-grandmother. But remember, the great-grandmother really didn't have any rules or anything, and that's why Nikki left in the first place. So the conversation went good with the police officer, and then she left. Now, while on her way to wherever she was going, she got a call over the radio to return to the address. So when she did return, Nikki, she was frantic and she was saying that the girls essentially attacked her physically. It wasn't the first time that they got into a physical fight either. The police officer questioned the girls and they were saying that it was their mom's fault. But when you looked at the girls, they did not have a scratch on them. But as it relates to Nikki, Nikki had scratch marks, Nikki had cuts. So it's obvious that Nikki was the victim in this situation. So the girls got charged and they went to court, and it was going through court, like being dragged on for a few years. The girls were sent to counseling with their mom, and at the end of it all, they were sent back to live with their mother. So they assumed that everything was fine and alright, but apparently it wasn't. Even family members came forward to say that they knew that these girls resented their mother, but they just thought that it was teenage girls doing teenage things. They were just being rebellious, so they kind of just swept it under the rug. During the weeks leading up to the murder, the girls were arguing with their mother, but this was a usual thing. The mother had taken away their phone, saying that, you know, you can't really be texting these older boys, you know, the usual case. On that morning, the morning of January 13th, 2010, the girls were late for school and their mother was simply not having it. She was arguing, she was, you know, making a fuss about it. And the girls started to argue back, and this turned into a physical fight. The girls said that this fight wasn't like a regular fight that they had. It wasn't like just a random fight on the street. They felt the energy was different, and it was like a fight to the death. They would not have stopped until someone died. Jazz took a vase and hit her mom over the head with it, and in retaliation, her mom bit her in the chest. So when her mom bit her, she wasn't letting go of her at all, and then Taz took up a knife and stabbed her mom, and then they just went ham. At the end of it all, these two girls were covered in blood and their mother was dead. Taz then suggested that they put their mother in the bathtub for whatever reason, so the girls then dragged their dead mother into the bathroom, placed her in the bathtub. They tried to clean up a little bit. That wasn't working out, so they just got ready for school and went about their day like it was fine and dandy. And when they came home, that's when they decided to go and flag down the police. They actually said that they thought that by the time they would have gotten home from school, police would have been swarming the place and their mom's body would have been found, but that wasn't the case. And they said that they wish it didn't turn out the way that it did. They wish that when the fight started, they just called the police right from the jump and not let it get that far, because they really miss their mother. To avoid a trial, in January of 2014, Taz pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and a month later, her sister did the same. They both got 30 years and they're serving their time in separate prisons. Since they've been serving their time, there haven't really been any updates on the girls. We don't even know if they communicate with each other, if that's allowed, but this is the most recent mugshots. There's actually interrogation interviews on YouTube. So you have the one from 2010 and the one from 2014. This was also covered by Crime Watch Daily and other places. So there's like crime scene footage and stuff like that available. I'll try my best to link everything down below in the description, as I usually do. You know, I can show everything on my channel, but I'm sure that if you guys are that interested, you'll read up on it for yourselves. Anyways, so that's all the information that I have on the case, and here are my thoughts. This mother was really trying her best to prevent the girls from having a life that she had. Like, she got pregnant at 17. She was out. She was doing all of this wildness because she really didn't have anyone to monitor her. So she didn't want this life for her children, and she was trying her best. And this got her killed by her own children. Yo, that is crazy. I'm really happy that they got 30 years. I think that they should have gotten more time, because Where on God's green earth would a 16-year-old think to take up a knife and stab their mother to death? And it's not even one of them. Both of the girls did this. So there was clearly no voice of reason. We don't even know if one of the girls went ham and did this by herself or if both of the girls did it. We really don't know. You know what I'm saying? I think the girls are going to be like 46 when they get out of prison, because they did commit this crime when they're 16, you know, 16 plus 30, because they spent 4 years in jail awaiting trial, and you know, you get time served regardless. Anyways, I know that you guys have thoughts on this case. You can leave them down below in the comment section, and that's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all of those things. Links to my sources will be down in the description below if you guys want to read up on the case for yourself. And until next week, remember to be a beautiful soul, not just a gorgeous face. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Mwah, 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 mwah. Bye. Much better. My face is always in the camera.